How about now?
Yeah, I got you.
Okay. All right, cool. Sorry about that. So, all right, guys, it's been a little while since I recorded a podcast episode. We've been very busy at the shop and, Christmas and all that fun stuff. Obviously, retail business is really tough this time of year. And then on top of that, we have a lot of moving parts with the business and, I'm helping out other things. And so that and getting guests is getting a little bit more and more difficult this time of year, especially. So, with that being said, with this episode, I've decided to bring in a very good friend of mine, Chase Turner. Chase and I met when I was a very young and green lance, and Chase was fresh off of active duty and decided to switch to the dark side. Chase was a sergeant at the time, and Chase, I don't believe you were ever my platoon sergeant, but you were definitely my company gunny, and you were close. And
It was
yeah.
a short minute I had you.
Yeah, it wasn't long. Wasn't long.
Yeah.
Maybe a month or so. But because obviously I was maintenance and you were operator, and then as I got promoted, you obviously got promoted as well. So you were always a couple steps above me in the food chain there. So the first time we met was actually a pretty interesting time for me. Your first drill, I believe, because your first drill was also with Sebastian.
I came in about a year ahead of Sebastian.
Oh, did you? Okay, so I remember you had come in with someone else, and then I think my first drill. Okay, yes. So your first drill with the unit just all of a sudden out of the blue, we had known we were sort of a truck company. We were very much like growing, and out of the blue they decided, hey, we need to do something to do with machine guns, and then that's when me and Wesley. Which for those of you who are listening, I believe Wesley was my last episode of the episode before, where he's now a lieutenant in the National Guard. So me and Wesley were sort of teaching when we've never had to teach machine guns before. We were obviously relatively knowledgeable, but it had been some time where there was a lapse where we didn't have to teach anyone because we were a weapons company. And obviously, when we were a weapons company, me and Wesley didn't teach anyone anything because we were the ones being taught. We were the green guys. So when all the infantry dudes got out and they were like, hey, by the way, we need some grunts or faux pas grunts, if you will, to teach machine gun stuff. So that was our first drill, and it was a blast. We had a great time. And it's funny because that's sort of where the rest of my Marine Corps career went as far as more of the training sector. So that was your first drill. With that, I think I was in for maybe 3 years when you stepped on deck there, or maybe 2.5 and some change. I had just got back from Motor T school, so I just moved to Motor T. You were obviously a senior sergeant coming from active duty to the reserves. So you spent how long active?
7 years.
So 7 years. So take me through the decision. Well, first off, let's talk about the 7 years of active duty. What'd you do? What'd you do during those 7 years?
So I started. I joined the Marine Corps. Now being a recruiter, it's funny how it all came out. Mm-hmm. Some people think about it a long time. Some people don't, or whatever. I made an impulsive decision to piss my mom off. That's the whole reason why I joined the military. Never thought about it a day in my life. So I joined the Marine Corps. I was supposed to leave October 22nd. I joined July 25th. And then I didn't listen to my recruiter. And so he talks to my mom, moved my date up. And so I was supposed to be military intelligence. Thank God I didn't get that job, but that was what I originally signed up for. And they were like, well, you got infantry, Motor T, and AV operator, which is amphibious vehicles for anybody that doesn't know what that is. And I didn't know what that was, so that was definitely not an option. And I promised my parents I wouldn't go infantry, so I chose Motor T. My recruiter told me you got lots of time off. Lots of time to work out, lots of time for school. That can be true depending on what unit you go to, but I went to 29 Palms, California. So at 29 Palms, California, I was there the entire time. Started off as a truck driver. And all
what a shithole of a duty station.
I loved it. So I became a gym rat, and so that's why I love it, because it's probably got some of the best of the gyms. And you don't spend a lot of money there, so that's one of the good pluses of it. There's not a lot to do. But so I started off as Motor T, and you're talking about how you're kind of cross training, right? Motor T on machine guns, stuff like that.
Right.
When I started getting ready for Iraq, they didn't do that. If you weren't a gunner, you didn't get taught nothing about machine guns. And so when I went to Iraq, a kid or a Marine named Wilson caught a cheater pipe to the head, 133 stitches, permanent twitch, migraine, all this stuff because of horseplay, and he got sent home. And they're like, Turner, you're going to be a gunner. So all I knew was my thumbs were my safety zone at 50 cal. My hands were white. I had the white knuckles. Eyes were this big, outside the wire on a night mission, and this is all I knew. I was afraid my gun was going to go off just randomly. Didn't know a thing about the weapon. So then I eventually transitioned and did machine guns my whole time in Iraq. Became a senior machine gunner in the company, and I started training everybody on machine guns. Went to Afghanistan in 2011. I was one of the first electronic machine gunners on the Crow's weapon system in Afghanistan, one of 10. Not a big deal. Grunts didn't like it because it took a man out of the machine gun, out of the turret or behind the gun. So we got to take it. When we went, we didn't get to use it for 6 months. Then there's this big talk with colonels and stuff, and they were like, does it get a mind of its own and all this other crap? And then we finally go on our first heated mission or whatever you want to call it. And then we see all the Army trucks with it. Air Force trucks have it. Like it's just the last, we're the Marine Corps, so we're the last ones to get it. So then 2014 did another trip to Afghan, met my wife right before. And that was kind of my deciding factor because I was going to stay in. And then I just realized, I'm always training. And if I'm not training, I'm deployed. And so I was like, it's not the lifestyle that raised a family. So I got out. And so that's really the stint of my active duty.
Okay. So 7 years of active, and then you just decided on, because you came right from active to reserves, right? Or was there a gap?
I had a 10-month gap.
Okay. So explain that. Like, why'd we get out of active duty, and then all of a sudden on a whim you were like, you know what? Let's try the reserve side.
I'm sure you can agree to this. No matter, which I know you had a great time, so I'm not saying that. No matter if you have, what I've seen is no matter if you've had a bad time in the military, a good time in the military, or anything, when you get out, there's a void there. It's a change. It's a drastic change. You miss your boys, and so you're just like, and nobody speaks your language, and that's probably one of my biggest pieces of the puzzle that I still have a hard time with.
And I think the funniest part about that is like, like when we do stuff in the field, and I mean, we were just like dead tired, or we had been up for like 30 hours, or we did all the shit. And any little thing could be absolutely hilarious. Like you stub your toe or something so menial, and we would all die laughing because, one, we were very delirious, or just whatever story it was, and we found it so funny. And then I would get home and like I would tell my wife, like, oh my God, dude, Chase stubbed his freaking toe. And I would start laughing, and she's like, Keenan, that's not funny, But yeah, having people that sort of speak the language, or have the same sort of shared experiences does mean a lot. And that's probably the thing that I struggle with the most, getting out, like completely getting out, versus now. And for a lot of people, it's not as bad because you can like work with veterans, or like work with people who have the same sort of mindset. And obviously for me, I work for myself, and the two dudes who work for me, neither one of them were in the military. Jared started with us probably about 8 months ago. He retired from DPS, so he did 20-something years as a cop. So we do have some sort of shared experiences as far as that goes, but it is different. But one thing that really did help me fill that void, and a lot has to do with like your like mental, like your mental state and your mental health too, is just having dudes to just share in camaraderie with too. Was I started doing jiu-jitsu probably about a year ago, and that really helps. That really helps, because a lot of dudes that go there, the dude who owns the gym's a Marine. He's a really good friend of mine now, and having that, it's a big thing. So I could totally understand the want for you to at least have dudes in your life, you know what I mean, that you get to see at least once a month. So I could totally attest to that for sure.
Yeah, and the biggest thing, the realization, because I tried to join the Guard before I joined the Marine Corps Reserves, and my recruiter was trash, and he still works there. When I actually joined the Guard, he said, "Oh, you tried to join 2 years ago." I said, "Try 5, buddy." And then he was like, "Oh, what happened?" I said, "You just weren't a good recruiter." And so that was the last thing we said to each other.
Yeah.
But and then I went to a Marine Corps IR event because they were like, you can make $300 for 4 hours on a Saturday. And I got around Marines in a uniform. I was like, hey, what does it take for me to get back in? He's like, you're still under contract. We'll just extend it. So they extended my contract, and that's how I joined Baton Rouge like a week before I got married. And like what you're saying, I had 14 people in my wedding. I would probably had more if I built the camaraderie that we built at Baton Rouge, but that was my first week, and out of 14, 7 were military, and then the rest were people I grew up with. I don't talk to none of those people anymore that I grew up with that were in my wedding. Not one, and they live right here. Some of them are filthy rich, got amazing lives, but their loyalty and their reality of life, like it's not. I mean, yeah, we all want to make money, we want to have a comfortable lifestyle, but that's not the end game, right? The end game is about the quality of each other's time, building that friendship. I've got friends in Louisiana, you and Garland. I've got Denver, Colorado. I got 2 guys, and we travel all around all the time to just see each other. So
yeah, and that's a really big thing too, man. Is like I feel like regardless of how you felt your experience was in the military, whether you had a shit experience or like you just had a really good time and you had a good experience, the dudes that you met are probably going to be. I mean, I wouldn't say all of them, right? But I mean. Majority of the dudes that you met throughout your time in the military are going to be with you for the rest of your life. Like just like you. I mean, out of all the people that like I went to school with, I mean, there's probably a couple people that I went to college with that I kind of talked to, but like, dude, from high school, no one, unless they were like my family. I don't talk to any of them anymore. And all the people that like I talk to, like friends on a regular basis. Every single one of them, I either met from my shop, like within the last couple of years, but like even then, most of them were in the military, except my buddy David. But like David, Jerry, most of the dudes that I talked to that like I didn't serve in the Marine Corps with, I met through my shop, so we have that experience. But like, dude, almost all the rest of them, all Marine Corps. I mean, Evan, Trace, Dylan. Yeah, exactly, right. But yeah, man, most of them, even and a lot of them I have, and they support you too. Like it's just a different level, like a different level of friendship too. Like for example, Captain Jackson, he just bought a gun from me. We were just texting back and forth, and he's like, "Hey, this is sort of what I want," and I was like, "Bro, I got you." We explained everything. I mean, I'm obviously an extremely busy dude, so for me to send more than 10 text messages to a single person in a fiscal year, like that's a lot for me. And I mean, I sold him a gun, and it's just it's a different level of respect and friendship, I think, that we get from dudes that we served in the Marine Corps with. And like that's one thing that I really talked to Wesley about too. And like obviously that's something that I long for. I would love to get back in, but the Marine Corps did not deem me fit to give me a rocker. So it's like, well, I mean, it's like a give and take. You know what I mean? Like it's like any other relationship. So. But my mustache is growing in, and I have a man bun now, so I don't really want to cut it, and so I don't think I'll do it now.
Just want the girls to style your hair later.
Actually, Phoebe helps me some mornings, so
I don't do the hair unless I can brush it, and that's where it stops right there.
I'm getting pretty good at some stuff, but a lot of it when I can't do the braiding.
This is getting long, so I'm actually getting a haircut in the morning, so.
Oh no, like dude, my hair, it's like down to here now. Yeah. It's pretty sexy.
Yeah, I might not ever come see you again.
All right, if that's what it means. I mean, it took me freaking 6 months to get you on the damn podcast. So
I know. Well, both of us are extremely busy person.
Yeah, that is
true. I mean, how long have you had my can?
Oh, dude, a hot minute. Well, you bought it off the website, so I've had it for a year. Yeah, you bought it off the website. I've had it for a year. But yeah, so one got approved. We're just waiting on the BOGO, right? The free. Yep. When did we file for that one?
I don't remember. I'm a patient guy because then I'm gonna come buy more stuff. Just don't let my wife watch this podcast.
Yeah, that probably is for the best. But I am starting to get a lot cooler shit. But actually, I was talking to a dealer. They make like sort of like bougier Glocks, I guess is the best way to describe it.
Shiny ones.
No, it's just more upgraded. And you pay for the name. It's called Langdon Tactical. Yeah, they make pretty decent stuff, and they heard that we were expanding, so they were like, "Oh, so now you can afford our guns." I was like, "I don't think that's exactly how that works." You know what I mean? But yeah. So actually, I was actually talking to the general contractor today, which I know you said you were interested in doing that as well. But yeah, I was talking to my buddy Arlen, who's a GC, which I can get you in contact with him. He's a nice dude. Army. He actually went to West Point. I don't think, and I've been trying. He's another one that I've been trying to get on the podcast. He owns the ranch that I used to work for.
Oh yeah.
So I actually had lunch with his wife today. I went and bring her some stuff to. They're getting gifts or whatever for their ranch staff, which I probably shouldn't say that because it's for Christmas. But I think they're doing it on Wednesday. It's not like any of their staff probably listens to the podcast anyway, so we're fine. But yeah, so they've heard that we were expanding, and they tried to like get in there and everything, and I was like, look, I'm not still not interested. Even though I'm moving to a nicer part of town, it's still my money. I don't have an investor or anything like that. So they're like, oh well, okay, I guess it is what it is. But I guess we'll kind of go from there and just see. But yeah, we're still kind of in talks about it, and I'm trying to get more tenant improvement money. And by tenant improvement money, I mean that I'm just trying to get them to pay for building their building, which they're really dead set on me paying for, which doesn't sit well with me.
Yeah, no, it's a hard. I like I told you, me and my mom were getting a little bit of an argument about it, and I'm like, I don't care. I'm not. Yeah, because if I was a tenant, I'd probably be hard about it too, but then at the same time, I understand where you're coming from, and it's kind of like a double-edged sword no matter which way you go at it. And it's kind of
I feel like it would be different. Like, for example, my landlord in Garland, right? I tried to expand where we currently are, and I wanted to break down the wall and expand into the new suite, which I was fine with paying something because I'm incurring an additional expense on my landlord, right? But a lot of the tenant improvement that I requested in Garland, I wasn't willing to pay for, like, for example, to redo the flooring because it smelled like smoke. And I was like, look, I'm not interested in paying for that because it needs to be changed anyway. Now, the construction to tear down the wall or to build the frame, because I needed an office. I was like, to build the office, I'm fine with paying. It would have been like $12,000. And I was like, I'm fine with paying that. And we can sort of make an arrangement as far as like free rent goes, since I'm incurring an additional expense. But like, this dude wanted me to come out of my own pocket like $95,000 to build out his building because it's totally unfinished. Like, when I tell you it is raw concrete.
No, I agree.
And I'm like, dude, I'm not interested in building it out for you.
Yeah, I think that you should incur, like, in my opinion of a tenant, you incur the cost of what you need to be specialized for your store. But anything that's walls, create any kind of structure that once you're out that they probably won't use anymore, then they should incur that cost.
Well, I feel like if my build out was major or it was like super different or super weird, but I mean, okay, so here's exactly what I'm asking for. So first off, a bathroom that's mandatory, right? I mean, it's CO applicable. So they were offering, I think, $85,000 for tenant improvement, but it's not really tenant improvement. It's just, for the most part, it's just like code compliance. Like, to get it from, it's called a white box finish out, where it's just like 4 walls, paint, flooring, electrical's done. There's a bathroom, HVAC system's done. Basically, I could go in right now and get a certificate of occupancy. Like, it is ready for business. And then from there, I need an office, I need a safe room, I need a barber's chair. All that stuff is additional expenses. But for the most part, I shouldn't have to pay that either. Like, I'm signing a 5-year lease. It's like, it'd be one thing if I was like, hey, I'm going to be in and out in a year. Like, okay, yeah, that's fair. Yeah, for that, Keenan, you're going to have to pay up front. But it's like, dude, I'm going to be there for 5 years paying $6,000 a month. Yeah. You're going to get your money back. The building's not going, even if I were to leave in 5 years, the shit is still there.
Yeah.
And if you were smart and thinking about opening a gun store, like, it really wouldn't surprise me if 2 months after I left Garland and moved to Saxe, if another gun store doesn't move in. Yeah. I mean, that would be smart business, right? And I'd be kind of butthurt that my landlord would do that to me because I was very good to him. But also, it's business.
Yeah.
You know, which that's another idea entirely. But anyway, I'm sorry we went off on a tangent about that, which we talked about that on the phone too. So I never got to quite finish that story. But yeah, so we're still in sort of talks. I'm asking for about twice as much TI money. They wanted to offer me like a shit ton of free rent, which I'm like, listen, let's meet in the middle. Give me more TI money. I don't need a year of free rent. Give me 6 months free rent. All the TI money I want, I'll sign a 5-year lease at the agreed upon rate. I'll sign it tomorrow. And supposedly they're thinking about it. And I was like, look, I mean, while you're thinking about it, I'm still shopping around too. You know what I mean? It's like, it's the first person to give me what I want in a town that's sort of not building a lot of retail businesses. So, but anyway, I digress from that nonsense. So we talked about obviously your decision to join the reserves. Okay, so you obviously wanted that camaraderie again. Was that I know that was a major factor, I'm sure, right? You wanted, to get back in the Marine Corps. You wanted something to that avail. But were there other factors as well? I'm sure TRICARE.
I didn't know anything about it. Actually, my first drill was before the drill you were talking about. Was Gunnery Sgt last drill. And it was a family drill or whatever, family day drill.
That was a very weird. But yeah. let's not talk about that on the podcast.
Yeah, no, I like lost my mind day one on the check-in on everybody in the whole unit. But
actually, so they had a dude. I'll text you his name, but they had a dude who actually him and Amcar were very close, and he wore 3 stripes up cross rifles in the center, and he was pretty yoked.
Yes. Yeah, I got you.
Yeah. And he actually re-enlisted, like 100% re-enlisted into the IRR, so it wasn't like obligated. And then when he found out Amcar was popping smoke, he dropped. Yeah. It's like really? Yeah. Like really?
Yeah. No, there's some
people.
It's well, and I went into it with a bad mindset because like 100%. When you're coming from active duty, you have done nothing but talk trash about the reserves your entire time, and so it was a huge eye opener. I mean, everything that I've done, I've had to swallow some sort of pride, right? Like just every shift I've taken. But I mean, the humility has taught me a ton, and I think the reserves is actually harder than active duty. And that's because you're putting all these pieces together, especially from the world I came from, finalizing as the company gunny, trying to put all the training together, all that crap together, fight I&I, and try to let it be our shop and all that crap. But it's like you have to get all your PTP training done every year so that you're qualified to deploy, and you may never deploy. And you got to do that on cycle. And like what range we burned like 42,000 rounds in I think freaking 2.5 days or 2 days.
Yeah, just an obscene amount. And that's one thing that like when I went to marksmanship instructors course, that was one thing we talked about, because the course that I went through was 100% run. That's the only MOS producing school in the Marine Corps that is 100% run by reservists. Was the coaches course that they put on for the reserves every year. And that was one thing they talked about, was basically it's 10 pound of, the reserves, especially as far as like training goes, it's 10 pounds of shit shoved into a 1 pound bag. And it really is. Like I was talking to a friend of mine about it. And as a matter of fact, I got augmented out to help an active duty unit a couple years ago run a range. And they were so baffled at how like fast I wanted to move. Because I'm used to, dude, we have to qualify 130 dudes in 2.5 days.
And they got 2 weeks.
And they have 2 weeks to do this, and that's one thing. Because I was like, no. I was like, look, I'm sitting there, I'm literally talking to like, a full bird and, several captains. I'm like, by far, I was a corporal at the time, by far the lowest ranking dude here. And I'm like, all right, Skipper, here's what we got to do. We need to do this. We need to be up by this time. I want, if we're going, if we told range control that we're going hot at 06, I want to be pulling the trigger no later than 6:01. And I'm going in here with a reservist mindset, and they're like, let's calm down, bro. We have this much time. And I was like, whoa. Like, that's crazy to me, you know, how big of a difference it is. But yeah, it is tough, especially when it comes to how much training you have to do inside that fiscal year, how much shit the reserves have to do on top of maintaining skills and proficiency on your MOS, on top of maintaining physical fitness on your own. Basically, it can be really daunting, and that's one thing that a lot of active duty dudes who at least have never been in the reserves or never been on I&I, they fail to understand how difficult it is for a reservist, because on top of all this stuff that we have to do, I have a home life. You know, I only do this. I mean, we all know that, especially when you become, you know, platoon sergeant and NCO, all that other stuff. I mean, we don't really work one weekend a month. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, I'm constantly answering emails, texting people, hey, we need to have this, and done before we step on deck. You know, so I mean, you work a lot more. So it's not just 1 weekend a month, especially on our side, once you actually, you know, start, you know, getting a little bit of weight on your collar and things like that. So yes, I do agree with you. It is a lot more difficult to be in the reserves, especially a deployable reserve unit. You know, like, that is a lot more difficult than I think being on active duty.
And the other piece is you have the option to show up. Like, nobody's going to come get you. And they'll send a marshal, you 9 drills. I'll do your discharge packet, and I'll send you something in the mail that kicks you out.
Yeah.
And then the other piece is in active duty, you get away from your environment. And some of these kids come from a bad environment, and they go back to it. And so it creates attitudes and a lot of stuff that was beat out of them, per se, and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Or basic training, look at me, Army, and boot camp, and then it turns around and they go right back to that lifestyle. So it's definitely a challenge, and then you have to make the decision, because I tell everybody that joins the military, it sucks. Like, just first and foremost, I'm not sugarcoat it. The military sucks. That's not what makes it fun. It's the people. I mean, one person that made it the most fun that I had, and he was probably my biggest turd, is Creel. Funniest little dude in the world.
He was funny, man, and I think that was another thing too. It's like, he became more funny when we were all like dead tired. Like, as a matter of fact, me and Creel, alone and unafraid. I think there might have been one more person with us, but me, Creel, and someone, we were at a machine gun shoot in 29 Palms, and I needed one part because we were gonna be like, like disqualified or whatever from a machine gun shoot if I didn't have like one rivet pin or something. We just need like one thing. Dude, we drove like 2 hours back to get it. We got lost. On the way there and on the way back, we got lost. And then on top of that, because you have to like radio into like range control when you pull up to, FOB Freedom, or I forgot the name of it. And we radioed into range control. We were sitting outside the gate for like, dude, I guarantee it was like 20 minutes. Either range control fell asleep or he was like taking a shit or something. But like, they just would not answer us. And then finally I just told Creel, I'm like, Mark, let's just go, man. Like, I'm fucking tired, man. I just don't have time for this shit. And but yeah, that was probably one of the more fond moments I've had with Creel, was getting lost twice. We got lost. We went down a tank trail in a Humvee and almost got stuck. We pulled up, like, the range was supposed to go hot at like 0.5 or some shit. Dude, we literally pulled up at like 4:48. We were gone all night long. And then after that, we had to go hot. And then Lieutenant Jackson was like, did y'all just get here? And me and Creel were like dead. And we're like, yeah. Yeah.
No, there's some crazy stories out there, especially with like AT. I think when Lieutenant Jackson at the time lost his ever-loving mind, never seen an officer lose their mind, and he's just a well-rounded individual. Like, he just had a side to him, and you're like, wow, I've never seen an officer carry it so well. Mm-hmm. And because I think that's when Kennedy did the death walk with the HDP, or I never can do it.
HDPs.
Yeah,
I think he made more of a dramatic thing than it needed to be. I'm like, dude, we do this all the time. Like, it's not that big of a deal. But actually, I think the funniest thing about getting an ass chewing from Captain Jackson was because he's an attorney, so he's very well spoken, and getting an ass chewing from someone who's so eloquent is like almost I wouldn't say it's prideful, but there's some level of pleasure to it. You know, it's like I remember what was the I after Captain Kohler? He was a lieutenant. He was only there for a few months. He was a Mustanger.
Yeah, I can see his face. Dude that drove the Cadillac.
Yes. Or no, he drove like a Toyota Supra or some shit, didn't he?
No, it was
like some sports car.
He had a CTSV.
Maybe so. Yeah, okay, yeah.
It's like in Japan or something.
Yeah. So I remember he chewed out. Well, you remember like I think Latson like popped smoke early from 1AT or whatever. Like after I left, and there was a big whole fiasco about that. So when we got back, Latson got an ass chewing from this lieutenant or whatever. And afterwards, like I talked to Latson. I'm like, look, man, I'm not gonna beat a dead horse. You just got your ass chewed for like an hour and a half. Like, did you learn your lesson? Like, can we move on from this? And he literally looked at me and he goes, dude, because he was a Mustang. He was like a corporal or a sergeant in the infantry or whatever. Then he was like old as shit. And Latson looked at me and he goes, I think that was the best ass chewing I ever got in my life. He's like, that was actually fun. I'm like, only you would say that. You know, like only you would find pleasure in getting an ass chewing.
Latson was probably the hardest kid that I ever had trying to mentor without being too nice, because he was always a pain in my ass at the same time.
Yeah.
But he probably had the most potential out of anybody in that command.
And I think the funniest thing about Latson, because like when I first met him, I was like, fuck, like he's gonna be like, man, like he's gonna drive me up a wall, man. I know it. And actually, to this day, Latson is probably one of my best friends. Actually, out of anyone other than like residents of like the Garland area, like all my friends that aren't from Garland, Latson's actually been in my shop the most.
Yeah.
I think Latson's been 3 times. He just shows up randomly out of the blue, and he's like, "Oh, you know, I think I'll take this." And I'm like, "Derek, you gotta like let me know, man, because you know, like I'm not in and out all the time, you know." But yeah, dude, that's another relationship that I definitely treasure is the relationship that I made with Derek. And coming from where we started, I would have never thought that our friendship would be where it is. And it's just like, God, because he was just one of those like trouble kids that would just, I mean, constantly doing shit that he shouldn't be. And I'm constantly having to talk to him and mentor him and counsel him, you know. And then obviously towards the end, you know, once he got a little bit of rank, I think that calmed him down. And then I think the thing that really helped me with him was the more responsibility I gave him, like the more I forced him to be mature, that helped him out a lot. Like, because if he's one of those that you know he's a fuck up, and you just leave him alone and let him fuck up, they'll never learn. So if I give him people, and I'm like, you can't be a fuck up anymore, because now you have three kids to look after. You know, that actually was one leadership skill that I did not learn in the Marine Corps. I taught that myself, and that definitely helped me with Lat, man. Was just giving him someone or something to do. You know.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the biggest, a little bit off in right field on this topic, but one of the biggest things that I think failed in the reserves, and I think it was more so, I guess now Sergeant Major Rivera, whatever, she's retired.
Yeah.
But I think it's that meritorious promotion thing drove me insane.
Yeah.
Because they would force all these young kids to just have they see like just a spark of good, and then they run with it, but they haven't matured them at all.
But even then, sometimes, bro, it wasn't even a spark of good. It was just they had 4 people ahead of them that they've tried and it didn't work. So they're like, all right, next up to bat is, you know, da 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 da. As a matter of fact, my last AT that I went to, I was the staff NCOIC. I was in charge of like 20 dudes as a sergeant, which I didn't know. I thought Hall was supposed to be there, which we all know how that went. You know what I mean? But I went. And I'm not gonna say his name because I think he's a sergeant now and whatever. But dude, he was just being a bitch. Like, I mean, there's no other way to put it. He was just being a bitch. And I mean, we had a lot of shit to do. We had a lot of moving parts. We were, and I mean, I was constantly running around because I was actually running ranges in Alaska while trying to make sure that my dudes, and I'm not an operator, I'm a mechanic, so I'm just a babysitter at that point. But it's like I'm trying to make sure that all my dudes are where they need to be, you know, at their appointed place and time, and all this other stuff. And old boy, we'll call him Lance Corporal B. He would just fucking complain about everything. And you know me, I'm very non-confrontational. I'm just like, look, get over it. Well, you know, it got to the point where I pulled him to the side and I literally was like, look, we're here to do a job. We're here to do a job. You're going to do your fucking job, or you can pack your shit up and go home for all I care. I do not care. I don't give a shit how you're feeling right now. I don't care that you're tired. We're all tired. We're here to do a job. As soon as that job is complete, we can go to bed, go home, do everything, right? I ended up giving him like way less than average pros and cons. Like, I literally think I gave him like a 4-1-4-1. Like, he had a major attitude problem. And I learned that when his attitude sunk, his performance sunk, right? So obviously, when your proficiency, you know, in conduct, you know what I mean? So I gave him very low marks. I gave him like a 4-1-4-1. And there was no one above me other than Sergeant Major. And at that point, because I was the staff in COIC, and I sent it to her, and dude, she shit all over my pros and cons remark. Like, I'm talking like, and usually it's the opposite. Like, I'll put it way too high and they'll dumb it down or whatever. But dude, I think I gave him a 4-1-4-1, and literally all she wrote in her comment section, she gave him like a 4-6-4-7 or some shit, bro. Like, I'm talking, it was so widely different. And she was like, I totally disagree with the platoon sergeant. After being corrected, his improvement, you know, his attitude improved. And I was like, were you here?
No. Well,
you weren't even here.
She was always a person about herself, and 100%. I still agree. She could, like, if you had the conversation with her, she made it sound like it was all about the Marines, and it was 100% about her own career. And so
yeah,
that was the biggest. But she did help on a lot of aspects too, like the administrative issues where we couldn't get to Vegas. She handled that, and so being a detachment and dealing with that aspect is just another beast added to the fire. So,
which I will tell you this, man, she fought hard to get me a rocker. I will tell you that, and it wasn't until the end, because me and her did not see eye to eye at all. But you know me, I'm not a yes man. I'm like, look, like, if you tell me to do something, I'm like, hey, look, Staff Sergeant, that's just fucked up, right? We're not doing that. We can't do that. This is not happening. This is what we need to do, you know, whatever. And because of that, obviously, we never saw eye to eye. Like, I flat out told her, on a range, we're hot. She wanted me to drop my pack, fucking head on to Quantico to take an instructor's course. And I was like, no, I'm here. I just told my boss an hour ago that I'm going to be at work on Monday, and now you want me to go to Virginia. And dude, she called me fucking livid, right? And actually the first drill that she stepped on deck, I pinned on Sergeant. First drill. And she tried to take it away from me, saying that I wasn't PME complete, which obviously in active you have to, which I think it's different now, but I didn't do the resident corporal's course. I just did the non-resident, which is the only requirement. So I did it and I got promoted. And dude, she went through hoops and bounds to take it away from me, saying I wasn't PME complete, yada, 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 yada. And then I remember Staff Sergeant Olivero and Staff Sergeant Perez, which actually Perez came to my shop about a month or so ago. But yeah, they both went to bat for me.
Texas?
What's that?
Is Perez in Texas or just driving through?
No, he lives in Florida. He was visiting some family, I think in Corsicana. I could be very wrong. I'm probably wrong about the city. But yeah, he was visiting some family, and he just passed through. I ordered a specific gun for him so he came pick it up and everything. But yeah, so after that, that was our first interactions with one another. Is she gave me I had been a sergeant for less than 24 hours, and she gave me a negative counseling for not being PME complete as a sergeant. I was like, what? Like, my shoulders still hurt from getting pinned earlier, and I'm getting a negative counseling. And after a couple of years of working together, we started to get along. She realized that I was not budging and I'm not like everyone else. And then she eventually put me up for staff. And I did tell her, I was like, hey, Sergeant Major, like, I really appreciate everything you're doing. I don't think I'm ready to be an E6, but if you think I'm ready, the Marine Corps deems me ready, I'll do it. But I did tell her, I was like, I just want you to know that this is the defining factor for me. If I don't get selected, I'm getting out. And she's like, oh, you're putting so much pressure on me and whatever. And I was like, look, I didn't mean to, but I'm just saying, like, even if I wasn't up for this board, I'd be getting out. But I was like, I'm giving you one last huzzah to keep me in a uniform, and it was that. I ended up losing to a dude. He had a fucking Bronze Star, and it's like, okay, like,
yeah, no,
okay.
And that's the hardest piece about that board. So she offered me meritorious gunny after being a staff sergeant for 6 months, and I was like, one meritorious gunny a year in the entire nation. They're not going to give it to a 6-month staff sergeant. And you know what? Actually, I would have been under contract till 3 months ago. And you know the reason why I never was? Because of the page 11 I submitted for my tattoos and active duty never got input. And then I submitted it when I got to the unit. Then I submitted it a year later in the unit. I submitted it in May when they forcefully extended me, and I never signed my extension. And I found out through I was actually looking at switching units, and I called the PSR, and he's like, "No, man, you're still under contract." And I'm like, "What?" And he's like, "Yeah, Benjamin Finney extended you." I called him. I'm like, "What are you talking about?" And I chewed Finney's butt. And he's like, "Yeah, man, we just thought you'd come in and sign it." And I'm like, "You don't think you can give me a phone call beforehand? Like right. This is illegal."
Yeah, literally.
Yeah, and so then, so they did another page 11. Then I was at a career course in Quantico, and KISS did my measurements and my pictures again, and then put it in September. Simon emailed me and said,
"Hey man, first off, ask for that fucking dude, man. God damn, I could go off for an hour and a half about how much of a piece of shit that dude was."
Well, but that was my re-enlistment, and I was up. And then he said, "Hey, I need your page 11 for your tattoos." And I was like, "Hey, man, I'm just going to go ahead and take this as a sign. I'm just going to get out." And he goes, "No, I need that page 11 for your tattoos." I said, "The next response you send me, I'm going to tell you go fuck yourself. So you choose what you want to send." And that was the last conversation we had. And then I got called in the office, and first sergeant reserve's like, "I know you have a lot on your plate. I missed a final in college because I was doing meritorious packages. And so then she's like, I know you have a lot on your plate, but we can delegate." And I'm like, I know how to delegate, but this crap doesn't need to be delegated to anybody because I disagree with it. And so then she said, well, and we're going to put you up for meritorious gunning this year. And I was like, no, I'm good, First Sergeant. I'm done. So then I did that fundraiser to raise the money through, you remember the Aero Precision that you put the weapons together?
Yeah.
She tried to tell us it was illegal, that we didn't use. I was like, no, we're doing legal background checks, running through a civilian business. It has nothing to do with the military. All the funds are going to a local military unit. I think we raised, what, $4,500 or something like that?
Yeah, it was a decent amount, yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then that, and so she put me up, and I'm very much like a negative. Like, I try, because I'm the type of person that, like, if a certain idea gets in my head, it like consumes me. I don't know why. That's just who I am. And so I try to be really negative when it comes to like potentially positive things in my life, like this promotion, for example. I was like, look, there's no way that I'm going to get it. I'm not going to let anyone get to my head. It is what it is. If I get it, if the Marine Corps deems me necessary, then cool. But I don't think I'm going to get it. I think I'm just going to get out. And dude, I let her get to my fucking head so much. She's like, no, like, and then Shauna Science, right? Because she was put up, which, she was put up, which just like Gunny, right? There was one slot for meritorious E6 in the entire reserves in the 3,500 field. So I'm competing against, wrecker operators. I'm competing against mechanics, operators, everything, right? 3,500 field. And it's the same thing for Shauna, which she was active reserves, which is arguably more, competitive than the SMCR. And so I let her get to my fucking head, dude, and I shouldn't have. And she's like, no, like, you're pretty much a shoo-in, like, you got it. I spoke to several sergeant majors about it and the colonel and, you know, whatever. Like, I even did a Skype call with some colonel or whatever. He was asking me questions, and I was explaining to him, like, sort of like where I'm going with my life. And, like, I let it all get to my head. And then Lieutenant Penton, who was the I after the dude that we can't figure out his name, he even told me, he's like, yeah, I heard you pretty much got it, bro. I was like, shut the fuck up, really? So like I started, I told my wife, and I was like, baby, I guess I'm gonna stay in, you know, I guess. And then of course I check, and I didn't get it, and I was like, bruh, like y'all should just let me be negative in my corner and shut up. But like I let them all get to my head, you know, and that was so annoying for me. Because I didn't think I was going to get it, nor did I think I deserved it, but I let them all get to my head saying that I got it, and, you know, I was going to whatever. And then I would have outranked Evan, which would have been awesome for me, because sharing the same rank with that dude is frustrating.
I'm the reason why, well, he got the package, but I'm the one to put up. Oh, yeah. Man, that kid, he's an amazing soul, but goodness.
Yeah. Yeah, so I love him to death. He's one of my closest friends. But one thing that's really funny is every time I talk to him, which isn't as regular as you'd probably think, but every time I talk to him, it's like Marine Corps affiliated, the conversation. And it's like, Evan, I don't care. Like, I've been out for 2 years, man. Like, you know, that part of me is gone. And let's talk about, like, what's your civilian job, man? What are you looking for? Are you going to, you know, grad school, or, you know, like what's on the horizon for you? And everything is just Marine Corps, Marine Corps, Marine Corps. And look, I give it to him, man. I love the dude to death. But it's like, that part of me's gone, man. Like, you know, I have the T-shirt, you know, I have the shit plaque behind me. You know, like, I have everything to prove that I was in it and everything. It's just I refuse to let that be who I am as a person. You know, like, I'm just not one of those people that allows that to consume my personality, you know, which is funny because it's always and I'm not, you know, I love Evan. This isn't about Evan, but my brother, for example, right, got an OTH. Mm-hmm. He is the Marine Corps. But that's a trend. It's not just Lane. Like, that's a very common trend. Like, you have a lot of these dudes who get out the military who had a shit time, right? They had just a shitty time. They were either not good, or the Marine Corps wasn't good to them, which is common, and they allow that to consume who they are as a person. And, like, that becomes their personality. Like, I meet you at a bar, Keaton Alamo, Marine Corps veteran. It's like, no one cares. Physically, no one cares, you know? It's like, dude, I spent 9 years and a day in the Marine Corps, and I loved it. I did. I really enjoyed my time, you know, which isn't a common thing that you'll hear people say, but I really enjoyed my time in the Marine Corps, and I'd recommend everyone do it, right? Because I didn't have a negative experience. I had a relatively positive experience.
You meant National Guard, but I'll forgive you.
Yeah, I don't want to take away from you, but I don't allow that to become who I am. Like, you actually have to relatively know me, or I have to be wearing a T-shirt for you to probably have an idea. But if I'm wearing, like, something, you know, that covers my arms, which now I have tattoos on my arms, which was another reason why I got out. So I got out because I got passed over for E6. And at the time, which is different now, but you only rated travel if you were a PME complete E6. So I was like, okay, well, first I have to get E6, and then I'll have to go to Staff Academy to be PME complete, all that fun stuff, and then I'll start getting reimbursed for travel. I'm down. That was the first thing. Now, sergeants who are PME complete now rate travel. And it's like, what the fuck? And then second, at a much lesser rate was a reason why I wanted to get out was I wanted sleeve tats. Got them. Well, I got one. And then this one's just a half sleeve. It cuts off at the shoulder. By the way, did you see the John Basilone tattoo?
I saw pictures of it, yeah.
That's pretty sexy. But, yeah, so I get out because I'm like, yeah, I want sleeve tattoos now. And I get them. And now the Marine Corps is like, you know what?
That's going away.
Now what? You know what? Let's let these guys be warriors now. Let's not worry about, you know, being pencil pushers and looking like consummate professionals. Let warfighters be warfighters. And now they allow tattoos. And it's like, bruh. Spent 9 years
Yep.
I couldn't have it. I get out, which one thing I did tell Wesley, which I was like, you know what? I would like to think that I had some small part to play in that policy change. And he's like, yeah, bro, don't hold your breath on that one. And I was like, I'm not, but I would like to think that I am. But anyway, aside from that as well, let's finally get back to you, guest. Let me stop talking about myself so much. So obviously you were in the Marine Corps. You decided all the shit going down that, you know, Gunny wasn't in the cards for you, and you decided, you know what, fuck this shit. I'm just gonna get out the Marine Corps. Walk me through that. Walk me through that thought process.
So a lot of people do not know this, and it's something I tell some of the people that I do presentations for classes, and we haven't said this, but I'm an active duty recruiter now, so it's a different role, and nothing I imagine doing, but we'll talk about that in a little bit. So not directly, but lightly, my father-in-law owned an oil and gas company, and I was working for it while going to school full-time for petroleum engineering and doing the Marine Corps Reserves. And my executive vice president, which was my boss of commercial services, got cancer, and so he went ahead and stepped down. He was a partner of the business, and so they didn't have anybody that did contracts, vendor relations, purchase orders and work orders, all the safety regulations. So I became the supply chain manager, the regulatory manager, and the production tech for the company. And so, but he said I could not go full time until I was no longer in the military. And it was lightly said, but it was said.
Right.
And basically I knew what my parameters were, and I was like, easy day, oil and gas, upstream, top dollar, business, benefits are going to be great. Let's do it. And my wife was pregnant. So that was the other piece of the puzzle. So she was pregnant with our second, which are all named after guns. And then when I got out, I think I spent 13 grand that year in healthcare alone. And if I just stayed in the Marine Corps for 3 more months, I would have spent $0. And so that was a big learning curve for me. It didn't affect me. We were good financially, but I would like to have
it. Still sucks. Yeah.
And so and so I did it. I did for 1.5 years. I loved it. I was able to come and go as I pleased. When I was working part time, I still worked 60, 70 hours a week because that's just the way I am wired. And I was doing the reserves 30 hours a week with all the administrative BS. And there were some nights I'd sleep on my office floor and get up for 3 hours and run home, shower, and turn around, and come back to work. And so I think that's the crazy part about the military that a lot of people miss, is just that high tempo atmosphere of go, 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 go. And you just really can't find that in the civilian world. So, and then.
Which, let me pause you there for a second. And that is one really good aspect that a lot of employers, for example, because when you have someone who's in the military who's sort of, which it's weird, right? But the military teaches you how to be good employees, but not great employees. And I'll explain. So as far as like from the employer sector, right, that hat, most dudes in the military are very good and they're very task oriented, right? So if I give you 11 tasks to complete throughout the day, at the end of the day, they're probably all going to be complete. But the thing that the Marine Corps, or not, I've only ever been in the Marine Corps, so pretty much all of my, knowledge is going to be based on that. But I just think in the military in general, they don't train you how to look beyond to task 12, if that makes sense. So
I think in the tiering it does. So it's the steps of leadership, which Marine Corps is stronger at, but.
Yes. So, but like my main thing is like, okay, like for example, in the civilian sector, when I give an employee 5 tasks, which may be too many for some people, the chances of all 5 of those tasks being done are very slim. Now, if you employ like a veteran, if I give someone 5 tasks, those 5 tasks are going to be done. They're going to be done in the exact manner, you know, with the commander's intent and all that fun stuff. They're going to be done in the exact manner that I want them done. But the problem is that, and I've said this in a separate podcast, someone else's podcast, is the Marine Corps makes really good salaried employees. They don't make good hourly employees, right? So if I give you 10 tasks, you're going to complete all 10. But once you're done with those 10, most dudes are just, you know, in the military, once you're done with task 10, they're just like, all right, nice. And then they chill, right? They don't look for an 11th task, which is something that as an employer we want, right? I want you to stay busy. I want you to continue to further my own business as well. So anyway, sorry to take away from that, but that is something that, you know, like obviously I did talk about separately, you know, but it, you know, that is something that a lot of dudes, when you get out the military, it's good to maintain that I'm gonna finish everything mindset, but also you always need to be looking for the next task or next thing. What potentially could my boss want me to do next? You know, like I said, I mean, they make good salary employees, but when it comes to hourly workers, they're not very good at that.
Yeah, and there's a twofer on that because the military teaches you a lot of different, or leaders use different tactics.
Yeah.
You know, you get done, you're done. And then when you're done, they're like, oh, wait, we got to do this, this, and this. It's out of my control. Somebody else said it. And
right.
So people.
And then, yeah, also on top of that, too, it does depend heavily on who your leader was, right? You have some dudes that are super micromanagerial, which I fucking hate with every facet of my being. I hate it. I hate being micromanaged, and I hate micromanaging people. But if you have a leader who is a micromanager, they can say, hey, Chase, I need you to do these 5 things. And once you're done with number 5 and you find something to do, they're like, whoa. Did I tell you to do that? And obviously I despise that. So yes, I do understand what you're saying as well. You know, it does depend heavily on how you were molded from your leader, whether they were, you know, what someone considered toxic and be micromanagerial to sort of like, you know, like sort of like how I was, and it's just sort of like, hey, you know, when you're done, try to find something to do, but if not, whatever, you know. But I was also very much like a, hey, I don't give a shit sort of, I don't, you know, it's whatever sort of mentality.
Yeah, and but that's also the leadership traits. It's like when you're doing the promotion pieces, it says minimal supervision, looks for next tasks, doesn't need, like, can handle the whole load for the day without any follow up or anything like that. So and that's why, because people considered our little crew at Baton Rouge favoritism or whatever, but y'all were the guys I didn't have to go find what was next to do. You always came to me and were like, hey, is there anything else we got to get done for the day?
Right.
And that's what I think develops growth. But the Marine Corps is the best at it in the leadership aspect because they force leadership. It's not an option. And in the Army, you can be an E4 for freaking ever. So,
and that was one thing, like when I talked to Wesley about his experience, because his experience was enlisted in the Marine Corps and then commissioned in the Guard. And that was one thing that he said, because it's so vastly different on how leadership and authority is portrayed in the different branches. You know, like in the Marine Corps, as a sergeant, you are everything, right? As a sergeant, we're the backbone of the Marine Corps. You know, and to a lesser extent, a corporal is just as important as a sergeant. Where he's like, yeah, man, in the Army, it's just vastly different. You know, it's just, you know, like, yeah, you don't really get any sort of authoritative role really until you're about an E6.
E7.
Yeah, and like I was like, man, that's really weird. And so, but I think Marine Corps as a whole trains like just leadership better because we're taught it at year 3, right, or year 4, or you know, like, you know, and as a corporal, dude, I was in charge of. As a corporal, I was in charge of 140 dudes firing live rounds. Like what other facet of any branch? And you know, at what rank do I have to be in charge of that many people? You know,
and that's the hardest piece of where I come from. because I've learned, I'm older and I've gone to college. I almost have a college degree in petroleum engineering. I'm now doing cybersecurity. Um, I've learned that I don't want a degree. I'm going to get a degree just because I earned it and I've worked hard to this far to get one.
Yeah.
But I don't want to work for nobody. So what the hell do I need a degree for? I just need the specialization and figure out how I want to drive my business. But the civilian world was killer for me. I was a fast exceller in everything I did. I couldn't connect with anybody verbally because I was too direct and too aggressive, I guess you would say. And then and I've done corporate subsea services side. I've done blue collar and branch manager of that. Went from inside sales to branch manager in 2 months, and then I went and worked for my father-in-law, which is like probably the hardest, I would say, because you're family, so everybody shits on you. And then I worked myself up from the bottom, and I said, "Hey, I'll be a good private. Yes, sir. No, sir. How can I help you, sir?" To the point that I finally walked in his office and slammed the door shut, and said, "Would it be easier if I quit my job?" And he was like, "What? No." And I just saved him about $3.75 million on a project. They've never saved money on a project ever. And he was like, "No, you save us money. We need no supervision, all that stuff." I was like, "Fine, but I'm flipping the switch." I was like, "I've done all this crap in my past, and I'm tired of being talked down to by all these old guys that have been in oil and gas." And I think day 3, I told the accountant, "I can slice your throat and watch you bleed out in front of me with a smile on your face." So that was, but I mean, I was just done. Like I would have easily.
Yeah.
He came up to me one day. He goes, "Turner, you're our safety guy with CPR and AED. What if I had a heart attack?" I said, "I just try not to trip over you as I walk by you." And so that was, but I mean, it was just to the point where I'm like, I'm done with you folks. Like y'all don't respect me, so I'm not gonna respect you. And in hindsight, I've done way more than any of these dudes did. They've sat in an office and just made money and filled their pockets. So, but yeah, the military is definitely a hard lifestyle to transition from. And like when I talk to active duty folks about the transition, they say like, I have. They're like, "Oh yeah, but because I don't even think the Marine Corps is the best branch anymore," and that's not me knocking the Marine Corps, because I love my time in the Marine Corps. I wouldn't be who I am today, but I think that it's what are you trying to get out of it? Because one day the military will be over. No matter what you do, you're going to die, you're going to get negatively discharged, you're going to get discharged, or you're going to retire. Those are your 4 options for the military. And so, but the military is going to move on without you regardless.
Right.
And so what are you doing to set yourself up for after? And so that's what I think is the best branch for that person. What are they trying to achieve?
And that was one thing that when I talked to Wesley about it, because I was like, hey, obviously we talked about several different things, but the biggest question that I had for him was, obviously he was in the Marine Corps and enlisted. He got super fucked on more than one occasion, decided to get out, get his bachelor's degree, pursue a commission and all that other stuff. So I asked him, I was like, well, what branch, as a budding high school senior, Keenan, what branch should I join? And he said, well, it depends on what you want out of it. But he said, most people I would probably push to the Marine Corps, right? And one thing that I told him about was it's kind of like how you have like LSU, obviously before Brian Kelly, our football program, you had people who were moderately mediocre in college. They go to the NFL and shine with proper coaching and everything, right? So you have a good baseline, you learn technique, you go to the NFL and you freaking, you excel because now you have proper coaching. And the Marine Corps is almost like that. Marine Corps makes great leaders and great NCOs for other branches, which is funny because a lot of dudes that I grew up in the Marine Corps with got out of the Marine Corps, went to the Army. I know a couple dudes in the Air Force. I think one dude I know is in the Navy. And they're kicking ass and taking names. And I think that's because in the Marine Corps, leadership is taught to us at such a younger age or younger in career progression. And we're, we learn that, as a corporal, we can make decisions. we're not just a part of the cog anymore. We're actually a vital part of that cog. We're not just turning and burning anymore. And I think that you join the Marine Corps, learn everything that the Marine Corps can give you in 4 years, 6 years, whatever it is, and then you can go to another branch and absolutely freaking demolish, right? That is one thing that I took away from my conversation with Wesley.
Yeah, I'd agree with that to an extent, except the big challenge of course, everybody's is going to be personally ran, but the big challenge that I find is life. The longer I always push these kids to go to college as fast as possible, because life gets in the way. And as you know, you did school with wife, kids, all the challenges, military, all that, and it ain't easy. It ain't easy to sit after exhausted, finally got kids in bed, and then do schoolwork or do any of those things. And so I always explain to these kids, get your degree as fast as possible, because in reality, Wesley kind of delayed his career path for officer by doing the Marine Corps.
Absolutely.
In the sense of doing the guard per se. It's only 1 week in a month, but you're getting hell of a lot more benefits. It's focused on you becoming an officer. There is no real distractions per se for going that route, and it has a direct transition for it. Because the hardest piece for me is I've never done anything Army. I mean, I'm your top recruiter every year, and I can't tell you about BCT basic training other than my brother going through it or my soldiers doing it. AIT, all those, the job training, all that. I just get word of mouth from other people and haven't experienced it. And so I can't hold formations because everybody laughs at me because I'm over there doing my stuff Marine Corps way, and I'm not doing it Army way. And so, but also I've learned all of the branches have a purpose, a mission per se. So like, Marine Corps is the smallest branch, so they don't need every single person, right? The Army's 1 million something people, so they can be more adaptive. Like if you don't ever want to see combat, I can put you in a position that never sees combat because you're going to be behind a desk, and unless you go to an infantry unit or something, and let's be real, there's no combat really going on in the world other than here in the United States with all the BS. But I can put you in a position and you may never see combat because it's not like the Marine Corps where I'm a truck driver and then all of a sudden I become a machine gunner and I'm probably your most qualified radio operator just because of the diverse training that you receive over time, because everybody's got to be able to do everybody's job.
Right. And I don't know if you'd get that opportunity to have such a diverse sort of portfolio in any other branch because you have so many specialists. The Army's so big compared to the Marine Corps. Yeah. It's like, how many dudes do you know in the Army that, for example, have 6 MOSs? You know what I mean? Like that's just not a thing in any other branch because they're so much larger. And the Marine Corps like a lot of people say, like the Marine Corps can do more with less. And it's true, because you can have a dude like me who can wear 11 hats, who could do the job of 11 people, at least until my hips give out. You know what I mean? So it's a lot more fatigue, I think. But, wearing multiple hats can definitely be done. Yeah. So we're at about an hour and 10 minutes now. So let's sort of get to the major question, right, which is, obviously, you got out the reserves. There was a little bit of downtime there, and then you decided, I'm going to go. You didn't call it active reserves. What are you technically in?
It's AGR. It's active guard reserve. You have to be in that component to get an active retirement. So it's active reserve. Yes.
Okay, so basically active reserves, right? So you decided, okay, I'm going to join the active reserves in the Army, and now I'm going to become a recruiter. So let's talk about very quickly what that decision, what led you to that decision, and then also, like, what do you look for in your potential candidates, whether it be for, officer, enlisted, all that other fun stuff.
Yeah. So the decision to go Army National Guard was not a willful decision. We lost, COVID hit, Everybody's working remote. We got told our doors would be shut. Investors bought us out for pennies on the dollar when the market crashed to negative $35 a barrel. So when you're working for your father-in-law's business and he owns it, you're not usually planning on losing your job. But that was 45 days later, door shut. So all I said in my head was my wife was a teacher. So if you max out your healthcare benefits as a teacher, she would spend 25 grand that year. So I was like, I don't want that. So I said, I called the Marine Corps to go back to the Marine Corps Reserves, and they said I had to wait till November when they did promotion numbers to put me in the numbers for how many staff sergeants they accept next year. And so I said, hey man, I can't wait that long. I need to join now. And so I called the Guard and they said, we can get you in 6 weeks. And so I chewed my recruiter's ass one time before I enlisted. And then the day I enlisted, I said, you better not take a picture of me. You better not video me. I don't want to see you, or I'll come to your house and I'll beat you up. So I didn't want anybody to know I joined the Guard. I wouldn't even send a picture to my best friend that's a first sergeant in Camp Pendleton. And he would text me all the time. So I joined the Guard. I go to 3 job interviews. And I've always said I'd never be in the Army and I'd never be a recruiter. That's always been, I got an uncle that's a retired sergeant major in the Army. That's always been a statement of mine. I was highly embarrassed that I joined the Army National Guard. And so I said, I went to the 3rd interview and got in an argument with the regional manager in the interview. So obviously I didn't get the job. And I left and I called my recruiter. I'm like, you got any active duty opportunities? He said, you want to be a recruiter? I was like, no, not a chance in hell. And he goes, well, that's all we got. And I was like, all right, you know what? Let's do it. I didn't ask my wife, which I probably should have done first. But I went home and told my wife, hey, I'm going to be a recruiter. She's like, what? You suck at sales. Like, you're not going to be a good sales guy. You don't lie to people, like all this crap. And so I agreed with her and all of that. This is my most favorite job I've ever had. It's opened my eyes highly to how the military operates. I'm highly successful. I'm not going to put all my numbers out there, but I do pretty well at recruiting. And I actually love what I do. And I don't really have any criteria to look into people joining other than qualified, right? They got to be qualified to join because I believe that the process maps out who they're going to be. And so that's not a deciding factor for me. But my favorite applicants to put in are the ones that are struggling. The ones that just can't get in that easily and they have to work at it and all that stuff. And I'm sure we've heard the motivational quote from people that I watched it today that said, you know, oh, the special forces thing. The guys that wash up at Buds for Navy SEALs is usually the athletes, the college athlete that's been, you know, doing this all the time and that's been their focus, or the buff dude, the big jack guy that comes in or whatever. And it's the scrawny kid that's got to make it. He's the one that makes it through. And so because those are the people that enjoy what they do and what they're becoming, and they make something of their military experience for bettering their future. I put in a girl with 3 different kids with 3 different dads, had to go through legal. She's been told no by like 5 different recruiters and all that stuff. And now she's in Kuwait. She's probably gonna come home with 90 to 100,000 bucks in the bank, get a post 9/11 GI Bill and all kinds of stuff. And I changed her entire life. Not me personally, she did all the work, but I facilitated the process for changing her environment. And so that's what I enjoy for it. But I'm not as choosy as the Marine Corps is, because you saw on the group text who I ran into, Staff Sergeant Abby's out here in Houston. Mm-hmm. But I'm not as picky as the Marine Corps is, but I put into, I think what makes me successful is I don't lie to kids. Tell them everything there is. I can tell them about active duty. I'm one of the most versatile recruiters. Not many recruiters have been active duty in the Federal Reserves and now the Guard. I offer more benefits than any other branch of the military. So I'm the only military branch that while you serve, I can pay for 100% of your education. And that was the
So I was talking to a guy, not to cut you off, but I was talking to a guy, a friend of mine out here. His name's Noah Cunningham. I want to say he's like a staff sergeant in the reserves. I mean, in the Guard, right? And dude, the benefits of the Guard is fucking crazy.
Yeah,
crazy. So tell me everything, right? I'm thinking about joining the National Guard. Not me, but as if I was, right? So, I mean, just walk me through all the benefits, because Noah tried to explain them to me, and I was just like, mine was blown at how much benefits the state of Texas offers its guardsmen.
Louisiana has more benefits, and so Louisiana, as long as you're a part of the Guard, you're getting full tuition coverage at a college. So just being a part of the Guard. The Marine Corps, the Texas Army National Guard, we have a cap because we have the Hazelwood Act as well. You got to have 181 days of federal service to get the Hazelwood Act, but because we have that additional topper, they have a cap on the price. And so it's $9,000 state, so $4,500 per semester, plus $4,000 federal TA, which every other branch gets. The GI Bill is $407 a month, plus a $350 kicker if you score above a 50 on the ASVAB. So you're getting $757 a month, plus $6,500 a month. And then if you do our ROTC program, it makes you non-deployable, pays you as a sergeant, and you get a $420 stipend on top of the GI Bill kicker. And then when you get to the end of that program, unlike the other ROTC programs, because everybody's heard of Army, Navy, Air Force, ROTC, once you complete those, you owe them a commitment on the back end. Well, ours don't have that crazy commitment. You have, you can choose which direction you want to go. You can stay enlisted, you can do part-time officer, or it's a direct path into active duty as an officer. And the difference in our ROTC and the others is you're actually serving while you're doing it. So you're getting time in service. So that's how you get that OE pay. And that's where we were talking about that 75 grand a year starting out.
So just to put that into perspective for people who are listening, when I went to college, I think it's like chapter 36, which is the post 9/11, like the reserve GI Bill. I got $368 a month.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
That is it. $368 a month. And it was prorated. It was fucking prorated.
Well, and you didn't know, but you got the $4,000 federal a year.
Yeah. But I mean, the $4,000 is
a
drop, you know.
Well, and the difference in the Army and the Marine Corps is they have credentialing assistants. So, like my brother's going to school for cybersecurity at UTSA, and he can use state and GI Bill, and he doesn't have to touch federal while he's getting cybersecurity licenses on the side, all paid for. And so you can double hat it all and just and get it. I mean, it's insane the crap that you can do in the Guard, and then because we're the only dual mission force of the military, we're state and federal. So every other branch is federal, and we're the only one that's both. And so we deploy more than every other branch right now too. And so that's the other crazy part. And our deployments are pretty comparative to my previous deployments. It's a good chunk of change that you're putting away. So and get an experience in another country.
Cool. So let's talk about, so if they're, so do you recruit for just the Houston area, or can you recruit anyone in the state of Texas? Or
I recruit everybody in the state of Texas, anybody that wants to come to the state of Texas, because we're the only airborne west of the Mississippi. We're one of 8 states that has special forces. So if you want to do special forces part-time, Tim Kennedy's a part of our special forces in San Antonio. I've got units that can send you airborne, ranger, air assault. I mean, literally the sky is the limit in Texas. We're the largest state with the National Guard, but I can put in anybody that's not in high school. So I can put in as young as a junior in high school and 17 years old. So I'm one of the only branches that can, Army's the only branch that can touch a junior in high school, because they go to boot camp in between their junior and senior year. And the difference is they start their service while they're in high school. So I have a kid that's been in the military a year and 4 months right now. And
still in high school.
You're in high school, yeah. And he's already pretty cool. Basic training.
That's badass. So if someone's listening and they obviously have inquiries, or they want to reach out to you, how can we go ahead and do that?
They can just text me or call me at 713-726-4900.
Perfect.
Or hit your shop up, buy something, and then give me a call.
There you go. I'll definitely push you guys Chase's way. So, guys, this has sort of been a really good insight, I think, into seeing someone who, obviously wore so many different hats. Active duty Marine Corps, Reserve Marine Corps, got out. Now you're doing the the National Guard active guard thing. So you got to pretty much see just about everything that the Marine, or not just the Marine Corps, but several different branches, and you got to see a lot of what the military in general has to offer. So if anyone has any questions with regards to sort of any of those hats that Chase wears, by all means, you can hit him up. He's obviously a wealth of knowledge about as far as that, except for condition 2 on the 50 cal, which I had to throw that in there. What does that plaque say? There's a plaque behind you. It says something.
That's the only way that it's legitimate. All right, I was just about to give you a shout out that I buy all of my weapons, buy everything from you.
Yeah.
But I'll never buy that Barrett 50 cal that I'll buy from you, because you believe that condition 2 applies when you're not changing the state of the weapon, because the rounds are still on the feed tray no matter what they're touching.
Oh my God! But it takes an action to get it from under the feed tray to the feed tray.
The state of the weapon.
It literally does.
It does
I don't know what to tell you.
No, because I cannot be lazy and open the feed tray and put it against the feed stop and call it.
Yeah, and then you'll be condition 2, which I totally understand. You're going straight from 4 to 2, and that's easy.
Condition 3, rounds on the feed tray. There's nothing about where it is inserted to. It's just rounds on the feed tray.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So explain to me, if you're in a tank bunker, right? If you're in a bunker and you can't open the feed tray all the way, how can you go from 4 to 1 if you can't open the feed tray cover all the way?
You charge the weapon twice, but the rounds still.
So you're going from 4.
The rounds still stay on the feed tray. They don't change their location. They just move a little closer to getting to the chamber.
That'll be the one thing that will
close bolt, open bolt, like all this crap is going through my head.
The one thing that we'll always disagree on.
100% agree.
Always. So, guys, without further ado, Staff Sergeant Turner, if you guys are interested in joining the Texas National Guard or have any questions with regards to that, by all means, hit up my very close friend Chase. And actually, the reason why I texted you the other day, the thing came up. It was like 2 years or whatever since you had all that shit set up on your kitchen counter.
Yeah.
And I got to see all that stuff, so that was pretty interesting. But
shout out, and you didn't say anything back to her, so you're in trouble with Alyssa. So I'm just saying.
She gave me a shout out?
Yeah, she was wearing your shirt and took a picture and tagged you in it and all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, but I don't. That's not entirely my fault. I don't. A lot of people tag me and stuff, and I don't get a lot of notifications. So now I need to find
my wife, not me. So I don't.
She tagged the shop, or she tagged me?
She tagged you.
Are we even friends on Facebook?
I don't know. Y'all can work out all those details.
All right, I'll add her and then we'll figure it out, and then I'll tell her thank you and I'm sorry and all that fun stuff. So tell her I apologize. But Chase, buddy, thank you so much for coming on, man. It was a pleasure as always, and I definitely look forward to when you decide to swing on by the shop and come pick up your suppressors.
Yeah, definitely, bud. Thanks for having me.
So, all right, buddy. Thanks, man. Have a good night, bud.
Yeah, you too.
All right, man. Later.
Bye.